Hey guys, new and improved Coke Zero flavor here with another Magic video. Back at it again. If you guys like Magic videos, you should totally subscribe. And also, I'm going to pick one of you guys who is not only a subscriber, but leaves a comment below to win anything you want from my Piggy store at piggy.me. That's right, I'm being very generous. And one of you is going to have the chance to win anything you want from the Piggy store, whether that's my ACAN project, Anytime, or Persistence of Memory, or any of the other wonderful effects I have on that store. So make sure to leave a comment below and leave as many comments as you want. Whatever, it doesn't matter. We're all naked at birth. So today I thought I'd stop the monotony of repetitive card trick tutorials and talk a little bit about something special in the world of Magic, because I've recently come across one of these right here. Do you know what one of these are? Let me just spin it around right here. One of these. This is a GAFF deck of bicycle cards. So in this deck, there are about 1,000. There's actually about 54 different GAFF cards that you could use to come up with your own tricks. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, you will notice that I'm a fan of using these GAFFs and goofs in different sort of stylized routines to vaporwave tracks. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about GAFFs and goofs and when to use them and when not to use them and why you should use them and why you shouldn't use them. So that's what the topic of today's episode is going to be. So this deck right here is actually printed out by the United States Playing Card Company, which is kind of interesting because you could imagine that they have a giant factory and they're making all these cards and they're making all these bicycle cards and they're printing all these edgy designs. And then a nice portion of that is dedicated to making these weird ass cards that are only used by lonely ass magicians on Instagram. So that's kind of humorous to me. However, this is what I would consider to be a GAFF deck, meaning that they're specially printed cards designed specifically for tricks. Now, these are overt GAFFs, meaning that they're not GAFFs that are going to aid you discreetly. Now, there are some GAFFs in this deck that do aid you in doing tricks that aren't overt, meaning that, for example, it doesn't end with the spectator holding on or you holding on to a card that's specially printed. The printing of the card actually aids with the trick, which I consider to be a covert gaff. So an overt gaff would be one that's overt and you show the spectator, and a covert gaff is one that the spectator doesn't really see or doesn't really know that they're seeing, that helps you out with the trick, which I'm going to show you an example of that in a little bit. So what I like about this particular deck of cards is that it brings a variety of goofs and gaffs for all different effects. So you could do tricks with ESP cards, you could do certain tricks with the mispipped. You see this mispipped sort of queen here? That's kind of a dope one. The good thing about these decks is that they really don't give you any sort of instruction. So it's not like, hey, with this card, what you need to do is that you need to stick it in the front of it and you need to stick a label so it looks like a deck. So you could do this and it turns into a deck of cards that you could use. They don't say that. They just pretty much tell you, hey, here's a deck. Figure it out, G. Figure it out, my guy. So this deck actually has a nice variety of different gaffs and goofs. This one is a kind of misprinted 9 of spades, 5 of spades, normal blue back, but it is kind of interesting that you could do. You could hold the card this way and it's a 5. You could hold it this way and it's a 9, or maybe you can have a card covering this, right, and it's a 9. And then maybe you have a card covering it this way and it's a 5. Oh yeah, lots of things you could do with that. Here's one of my favorites, because guess what? You could just take this and do whatever 21 force you want. So you could have them roll a set of die and say, this is my prediction card right here. This is going to be my prediction for the card or the number that you're about to generate, sir. Go ahead, roll the dice. Roll these 3 pairs of dice. What number do you get here? That's great. How about you turn them over and add those as well? Oh, what's that give you? 21? Oh man, if only I had predicted that ahead of time. What you think this is, huh? You think this is a magic trick, son? You think that I'm not mind freak? Do you think I'm not Chris Angel, bitch? Or whatever it is you want to say to the spectator. But you have a bunch of gaffs here, or some that I've used on Instagram. I should link a little bit of hot B-roll as to me using some of these gaffs and goofs on there. But for the most part, this really opens up your mind to try to think of special tricks here. But here we could actually illustrate the difference between a covert gaff and an overt gaff. So here, this would be an example of an overt gaff, because this is something that the spectator actually sees, they handle, they touch, and at the end of the trick, they could look at. This would be an example of a covert gaff, because this is used to make an effect happen and the spectator doesn't usually see this card. So this card is either hidden, the other gaff part of it is hidden by another card, or perhaps it's hidden by your hand, but the spectator isn't actually aware that this card is in play. However, it does aid with the effect. So this could be used in ace assemblies. This could be used in sort of tricks where you want maybe the 5 of spades to vanish from a deck in a spread. So things like that. So this would be an example of a covert gaff, something you would use to accomplish an effect that the spectator has no awareness of. Now, as far as personal gaff preference, I really don't have any sort of affinity towards any type, whether that's overt or covert sort of gaffs. But this one in particular and this one are really good because these are very situationally based. So for example, something like this, you could have it so that the spectator is either vaping or smoking, hitting up that dope vape as they do these days. And you show a 7 of spades. You could do whatever double lips you want to say. Sir, do me a favor, blow some vape juice on that. And you go, mango? Is that mango palm? Yes, sir. So not only do you have a prediction trick, but then when you turn over the 7 of spades, you see that now the smoke has been somewhat printed on it. And here it's kind of dope because they pick, for example, a 7 of diamonds, and you show the 3 as a prediction card. And you go, you know what? This card needs your fingerprint, sir. Do me a favor. Give me your hand right here. I just pinched the card right there. Yeah, let's see if that works. Oh, yeah, it did. Okay, so was your card the 7 of diamonds? So they could have either wet fingers. You notice that their fingers are wet or something like that. But again, very situationally based, and these could kill in the right situation. But then again, using a covert gaff, something like this, could really aid in making a lot of tricks cleaner than they would ordinarily be and prevent a lot of sleight of hand. So these kind of take up the space of what you would use with sleight of hand. For example, let's say in this case you would need to vanish these 2 queens. Now instead of having to vanish 2 extra cards, you only have to vanish 1 card. So you only have to make or ditch 1 card in particular. So things like this really aid in tricks and really aid in avoiding complicated sleight of hand because the gaff does the work for you. So the possibilities are really endless when it comes to purchasing a gaff deck like this. Now, it really depends on the type of creator that you are because you're not going to be able to get instructions right off the box. So if you purchase a deck of cards like this, you need to make sure that you have already a pre-existing set of ideas that you would want to have with the gaff cards, and you would have some sort of motivation to sit down and actually create different tricks because you're not going to get instructions. You're not going to get any sort of direction as to what to do with the cards. So you need to be able to have time committed to sit down and think, what can I do with a double-faced ESP card? What can I do with a magnified 3? And if you guys saw my Instagram, which I should be showing you guys right now, you saw the trick that I used with this particular gaff. But you could have different sort of tricks that you could make up with these gaff cards, and it's really up to your imagination. So I do recommend getting a gaff deck like this if you want to become a little bit more creative, because this forces you to become creative. It forces you to come up with methods using the techniques that you already know to come up with different individual tricks and different individual things that you would have to come up with in order to make the effect happen. So I would definitely recommend a deck like this, which you could find in any sort of magic store on Amazon.com. I'm sure they have a bunch of these. Now, the only downside to using gaffs in an overt way, or that the spectator is aware, is that they become aware that you have purchased something exterior and you're bringing it into the effect, because as convincing as the change might be, as convincing as the effect might be, so here for example you show a regular 3 and then you're able to apparently magnify the pip, the spectators aren't usually stupid. So whereas they might be impressed by the actual trick itself, after a little bit of thought, at the end of the day it's just a specially printed card. So it really takes away from that organic feel, and it really takes away from that sort of spontaneity, because the spectators become immediately aware that you are using something external to accomplish the effect. A good example of this is a scene from the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin, where Steve Carell's character has a large ear that he's palmed in his hand, and he says, "Hey, you have something behind your ear," and he takes it from behind the girl's ear, and it's another ear. And then she goes, "So you had to carry a large ear on you the entire day?" Right? And that pretty much adds to the problem with using gaffs in an overt sense, in that, oh, so you had to carry that card in the deck. It becomes a problem to a spectator that decides to think for more than, I want to say, 2 minutes about a particular trick. So make sure to have that in mind before you do decide to purchase something like this and use it as an overt gaff. Now, the covert gaffs don't have that problem because the spectator shouldn't be aware that you're using those gaffs to begin with. So something like a double backer, the spectator shouldn't be aware that you're using that. Or something like the gaff that I showed you earlier, something like this, the spectator shouldn't be aware that you are using something like this. So that's a whole different story, and definitely look into purchasing a gaff deck for that reason if you want to use them for covert gaffs. However, for overt gaffs, that becomes a little bit of an issue. So make sure to keep that in mind before you do decide to do one of those tricks. So those are my thoughts on gaff cards, on gimmick cards, on gaffs, on goofs. Definitely it's a learning experience. Definitely it's something that I would recommend for anybody that wants to think a little bit more creatively about their Magic. Usually they're not super expensive unless they're being sold by illusionists. But when it comes to gaff decks, definitely look into it. I'll try to leave some links below as to where you guys can get some gaff cards yourself. And I hope you guys enjoyed that little bit of a look into gaff cards. You know, it's always fun to kind of talk about the other sides of Magic, like the gimmicks, the gaffs, the goofs, all those. So make sure to leave a comment below if you guys want a chance at winning something from my piggy store. You gotta like, you gotta comment below as many times as you want, and you gotta be a subscriber. You can't be one of those non-subscribers that usually linger around and don't hit that button. I'm gonna go figure out different ways to use a wavy mirror that I bought from IKEA to accurately depict how I look.
With everything that